Growing up poor ain't easy, let me tell you. But despite the odds stacked against me, there was one thing I had going for me, my knack for drawing. It was my escape, my way of dreaming bigger than our small town. But without money for art classes, my talent was like a bird with clipped wings, grounded, unable to soar. Then one day, Mr. Thompson, my school teacher, saw something in me that I didn't even see in myself. He encouraged me to enter competitions, to take part in special programs at the university. And when I hesitated, unsure if I belonged, he pushed me forward, his belief in me like a beacon of light cutting through the darkness. I'll never forget the day I received that letter in the mail, the one that changed everything. It was a scholarship, a golden ticket to a world I never thought I'd be a part of. I couldn't believe it, me, a poor kid from a small town, given the chance to pursue my dreams. University was a whirlwind of new experiences and opportunities. I threw myself into my studies, soaking up every ounce of knowledge like a sponge. And when I graduated top of my class, it felt like a victory not just for me, but for everyone who had ever believed in me. But as I stepped out into the real world, diploma in hand, I quickly realized that the journey was far from over. Landing a job at a design agency was just the beginning, the first step on a long and challenging road ahead. The pay was modest, barely enough to make ends meet, but I didn't care. I was doing what I loved, and that was all that mattered. I threw myself into my work, pouring my heart and soul into every project that came my way. And that's where I met Tom, my future hubby. I remember the first time I met Tom like it was yesterday. He waltzed into the design agency like he owned the place, flashing his charming smile. I couldn't help but be drawn to him, despite my best efforts to keep it professional. "Sarah, meet Tom." My boss introduced us. Tom grinned, extending his hand. "Pleasure to meet you, Sarah. I've heard great things about your work." I shook his hand, feeling a warmth spread through me. "Likewise, Tom. What brings you in today?" He leaned against the desk, all smooth moves and confident swagger. "I'm looking to spruce up my place a bit. Heard you're the best in town." I chuckled, feeling a blush creep up my cheeks. "Well, I'll do my best to live up to the hype." And so, our journey began. We spent hours poring over design plans, bouncing ideas off each other like old friends. It didn't take long for sparks to fly, and before we knew it, we were planning a future together. "I never thought I'd find someone like you," Tom confessed one evening over dinner. I smiled, feeling my heart swell with affection. "Me neither, but I'm glad I did. But life has a funny way of throwing curveballs when you least expect it. And boy, did we get a doozy. I think we should have a baby," Tom announced one night, catching me off guard. I nearly choked on my wine, coughing as I tried to process his words. "A baby? But we've barely settled into married life." Tom frowned, his brow furrowing in frustration. "Sarah, I'm not getting any younger. I want to start a family before it's too late." I sighed, feeling torn between my dreams and his desires. "I just don't know if I'm ready, Tom. My career." He cut me off, his voice sharp with impatience. "Your career can wait. This is more important." And just like that, I found myself agreeing to something I wasn't sure I wanted. But love makes you do crazy things, doesn't it? So, we started trying for a baby, our excitement overshadowed by the pressure to conceive. Months passed, and still, nothing. Each negative pregnancy test felt like a punch to the gut, and I could see the disappointment in Tom's eyes. "We'll keep trying," he reassured me, but I could hear the frustration in his voice. And then, finally, our prayers were answered. I'll never forget the moment I saw those two pink lines, the rush of joy and relief washing over me. "We did it, Sarah," Tom whispered, pulling me into a tight embrace. Tears filled my eyes as I buried my face in his chest, overcome with emotion. We did. Nothing can prepare you for the gut punch of hearing your child's diagnosis. We were over the moon when our baby arrived, but our joy turned to shock when the doctor uttered those dreaded words, cerebral palsy. Tom's face went white as a sheet, his hand gripping mine like a vice. "Cerebral what?" he croaked out, his voice barely above a whisper. The doctor's explanation was a blur of medical jargon, but the gravity of the situation hit me like a ton of bricks. My mind raced with questions, fears gnawing at my insides like hungry wolves. "What does this mean for our baby?" I asked, my voice trembling with fear. The doctor's response was like a punch to the gut. "It means your child will face challenges with movement and coordination," he explained, his tone grave. As we got home, the weight of our new reality settled in like a heavy fog. Tom's frustration boiled over, his temper flaring like a wildfire. "This ain't right," he muttered under his breath, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. I felt a surge of anger bubbling up inside me, threatening to spill over. "What do you mean it ain't right?" I shot back, my voice sharp with irritation. He turned to me, his eyes blazing with intensity. "You must have done something to cause this," he accused, his tone sharp, like broken glass. My blood boiled at his words, a fierce wave of anger washing over me. "How dare you?" I snapped, my voice rising with each word. "This isn't my fault, Tom. This isn't anyone's fault." But he wouldn't back down, his accusations like a relentless onslaught. "I can't believe you're denying it," he spat, his eyes blazing with fury. I watched Tom, feeling a mixture of anger and sadness swirling inside me like a storm. "Tom, we need to stay strong for our son," I said, trying to reach him through the haze of his emotions. But he shook his head, his eyes clouded with frustration. "I can't do this, Sarah. I just can't," he said, his voice cracking with emotion. And then, as if on cue, his mother burst into the room, her eyes ablaze with fury. "What's going on here?" she demanded, her voice sharp like a whip crack. I felt a lump form in my throat, the weight of her presence like a lead weight pressing down on me. "Our son has been diagnosed with cerebral palsy," I said, my voice barely audible over the roar of my own heartbeat. Her reaction was immediate, her face turning red with rage. "This is all your fault," she spat, her words like venom dripping from her tongue. I felt a surge of anger rising up inside me, hot and fierce. "How dare you?" I snapped, my voice filled with righteous indignation. But she wasn't done. "You brought shame upon our family," she continued, her words like a slap in the face. I wanted to scream, to lash out at her with all the fury burning inside me. But instead, I held my tongue, knowing that nothing I said would change her mind. And as Tom stormed out of the room, his mother hot on his heels, I was left alone with my thoughts. But even in the midst of the chaos, I knew one thing for certain: I would do whatever it took to give my son the love and support he needed to thrive, even if it meant facing the challenges ahead alone. But then, things took a turn for the worse. Tom demanded a paternity test, convinced that our son wasn't his. And when the results came back confirming his paternity, he turned his back on us. "I want out," he declared, his words like a dagger to the heart. "I will pay you alimony." I was blindsided, my world crumbling around me like a house of cards. But even in the midst of my pain, I refused to let him take everything from me. "I don't need your damn alimony," I spat back, my pride refusing to let me accept his pity. And so, I packed up our things and left, determined to make a life for myself and my son, even if it meant doing it alone. And let me tell you, it wasn't easy. But despite the overwhelming odds stacked against me, I refused to give up. I was a fighter, a survivor, and I would do whatever it took to give my son the life he deserved. I reached out to anyone and everyone who could offer support, from friends to family to complete strangers on the internet. And slowly but surely, I began to build a network of people who understood what I was going through, who could offer advice and a shoulder to lean on when the going got tough. The online support groups became my lifeline, a safe space where I could share my fears and frustrations without fear of judgment. And as I scrolled through the endless stream of messages and comments, I realized that I wasn't alone, far from it. "Hey Sarah, how you holding up?" one message read, the sender's username a jumble of letters and numbers. I smiled, grateful for the virtual hug. "Taking it one day at a time," I replied, my fingers flying across the keyboard. And as the days turned into weeks, and the weeks turned into months, I found myself forging real connections with people who understood what it meant to walk in my shoes. We swapped stories and tips, commiserated over sleepless nights and missed milestones, and celebrated every victory, no matter how small. But it wasn't just the online community that offered support. Friends and family rallied around me, offering a helping hand and a sympathetic ear whenever I needed it most. "Sarah, we're here for you, no matter what," my best friend declared, her voice fierce with determination. I felt a lump form in my throat, touched by her unwavering loyalty. "Thanks, Jen. I don't know what I'd do without you," I said, my voice choked with emotion. And as I navigated the ups and downs of single parenthood, I realized that building a support network wasn't just about finding people who could help me. It was about finding people who could lift me up when I felt like I was drowning, who could remind me that I was strong enough to weather any storm. Life threw us more curveballs than a pitcher on a bad day, but we weren't about to strike out. No way. We were fighters, me and my son, and we were gonna show the world what we were made of. Sure, there were days when it felt like the weight of the world was bearing down on my shoulders, when the challenges of single parenthood threatened to overwhelm me. But I refused to let the darkness win. I had a son to raise, a life to live, and I wasn't about to let anyone or anything stand in my way. I threw myself into my work, pouring every ounce of my energy into my passion for design. And let me tell you, it paid off. I landed big projects, made a name for myself in the industry, and proved to everyone who doubted me that I was a force to be reckoned with. But it wasn't just about my career. I was determined to give my son the best possible life, to ensure that he had every opportunity to thrive, despite the challenges he faced. So, I researched therapies, attended seminars, and sought out experts who could help him reach his full potential. And let me tell you, it wasn't easy. There were setbacks, plenty of them. But each time we fell, we picked ourselves back up, dusted ourselves off, and kept on pushing forward. Because that's what we did, we persevered, no matter what. "Mom, I did it!" my son exclaimed, his face lit up with excitement as he took his first steps with the help of his walker. I felt tears spring to my eyes, pride swelling in my chest like a balloon ready to burst. "That's my boy," I said, my voice choked with emotion. And as I watched him navigate the world with a determination that belied his tender years, I knew that we were unstoppable. Together, we were a force to be reckoned with, capable of overcoming any obstacle that stood in our way. But it wasn't just about proving the doubters wrong, it was about showing my son that anything was possible, that he was capable of achieving greatness, no matter what obstacles lay in his path. Years had drifted by like leaves in the wind since Tom had abandoned us, leaving me to pick up the pieces of our shattered life. In those years, he'd made no effort to be a father to our child, no phone calls, no visits, nothing. But just when I thought I'd heard the last of him, he came crashing back into my life like a wrecking ball. It was a regular Tuesday afternoon when the phone rang, disrupting the peace of our little home. I answered, expecting it to be a telemarketer or a wrong number. But the voice on the other end sent chills down my spine. It was Tom. "Sarah, it's me," he said, his voice heavy with urgency. I rolled my eyes, barely able to contain my frustration. "What do you want, Tom?" I snapped, my patience wearing thin. He wasted no time getting to the point. "I'm in the hospital. I broke my spine skiing," he said, his words like a slap in the face. I felt a surge of anger rising up inside me, hot and fierce. "And why should I care?" I demanded, my voice dripping with sarcasm. But he wasn't deterred. "Because I need your help, Sarah. I can't take care of myself," he admitted, his voice tinged with desperation. I scoffed, shaking my head in disbelief. "You expect me to drop everything and come running to your rescue? After everything you've done?" I spat, my words like venom. But he wasn't about to take no for an answer. "You owe me, Sarah. I'm the father of your child," he insisted, his tone growing more aggressive by the second. I felt my blood boil, fury coursing through my veins like wildfire. "I owe you nothing," I declared, my voice cold and unwavering. With that, I hung up the phone, refusing to let him guilt-trip me into helping him. I had spent years rebuilding my life from the ground up, and I wasn't about to let him tear it down again. But even as I tried to push him out of my mind, his words lingered like a dark cloud, casting a shadow over my thoughts. Was I really heartless for refusing to help him? Was I a bad person for turning my back on the father of my child? I pushed aside the doubts gnawing at my conscience, reminding myself that I had done everything in my power to make things work, to give him a chance to be a part of our son's life. But he had chosen to walk away, leaving me to pick up the pieces on my own. And so, with a heavy heart and a sense of resolve, I turned my focus back to the things that mattered, my son, my work, and the life that I had fought so hard to build. Tom may have been a part of our past, but he had no place in our future. After Tom, I swore I was done with love. I'd been burned once, and I wasn't about to let it happen again. But life has a funny way of surprising you when you least expect it. I met Jake at a design conference, a charming architect with a smile that could light up a room. He was confident, funny, and had a way of making me feel like I was the only woman in the world. "Hey there, gorgeous. Mind if I buy you a drink?" he said, sauntering over with a grin on his face. I raised an eyebrow, amused by his boldness. "Depends. Are you planning on spiking it with something?" I replied, my lips curling into a smirk. He laughed, undeterred by my sarcasm. "Only if you're into that sort of thing," he joked, his eyes twinkling with mischief. We spent the rest of the evening talking and laughing like old friends, trading stories, and sharing our dreams for the future. And as the night wore on, I found myself drawn to him in a way I hadn't felt in years. "So, Sarah, what do you say? Want to grab dinner with me tomorrow night?" he asked, his voice soft and earnest. I hesitated, unsure if I was ready to take that leap again. But there was something about Jake, something that made me want to take a chance. "Sure, why not?" I said, a smile tugging at the corners of my lips. And so, our first date turned into a second, and a third, until I found myself falling for him faster than I ever thought possible. He was patient and kind, always there to lend a listening ear or a comforting hug when I needed it most. But it wasn't just about the romance, it was about the connection we shared, the way he understood me in a way that no one else ever had. He didn't judge me for my past or my mistakes, he accepted me for who I was, flaws and all. He also accepted my son. "Sarah, I have something to ask you," Jake said one evening, his voice nervous, but determined. I felt my heart skip a beat, anticipation coursing through my veins. "What is it?" I asked, my pulse racing with excitement. He took a deep breath, his eyes locking with mine. "Will you marry me?" he asked, holding out a small velvet box. I felt tears prickling at the corners of my eyes, overwhelmed by the love and emotion flooding my heart. "Yes, Jake. Yes, I will," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. And as he slipped the ring onto my finger, I knew that I had found my happily ever after, not in spite of my past, but because of it. As the sun rose on a crisp morning, I couldn't help but feel a sense of anticipation bubbling up inside me. Today was the start of a new chapter in my life, a chance to leave the past behind and embrace the future with open arms. I glanced over at Jake, who was still sound asleep beside me, his face peaceful and serene. He had been my rock, my anchor in the storm, and I couldn't wait to begin this next adventure with him by my side. "Hey, sleepyhead. Time to wake up," I said, gently nudging him awake. He groaned, blinking blearily as he stretched his arms above his head. "What time is it?" he mumbled, his voice thick with sleep. I checked the clock on the nightstand. "It's almost time to get moving." "We've got a big day ahead of us," I replied, excitement bubbling up inside me like a pot about to boil over. He grinned, his eyes lighting up with anticipation. "I can't wait. This is gonna be the best day ever," he said, his voice filled with enthusiasm. And so, we got up and got dressed, our hearts pounding with excitement as we prepared to embark on this new journey together. We had spent months planning and preparing, and now the moment had finally arrived, the moment when we would open the doors to our very own design studio. As we stepped outside, the crisp morning air filled our lungs, invigorating us with a sense of purpose and determination. We made our way to the studio, hand in hand, each step bringing us closer to our dreams. And when we finally arrived, it felt like coming home. The space was filled with light and warmth, a blank canvas just waiting to be filled with our creativity and passion. "This is it, Sarah. Our own little slice of heaven," Jake said, his voice filled with awe. I smiled, feeling a sense of pride swell in my chest. "It's perfect," I replied, my voice tinged with emotion. And as we set to work, sketching out plans and brainstorming ideas, I couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement building inside me. This was just the beginning, the start of something incredible that would change our lives forever. Hours flew by in a blur as we poured our hearts and souls into our work, each stroke of the pen bringing us one step closer to our vision. And when we finally stepped back to admire our handiwork, I knew that we had created something truly special. "This is amazing, Sarah. I couldn't have done it without you," Jake said, his voice filled with admiration. I grinned, feeling a sense of satisfaction wash over me. "And I couldn't have done it without you," I replied, reaching out to squeeze his hand. Together, we stood side by side, gazing out at our creation with a sense of pride and accomplishment. This was more than just a design studio, it was a testament to our love, our resilience, and our unwavering belief in each other. I had moved on from my past, focusing on building my future with my son and new husband and pouring my energy into our thriving design studio. Days were filled with creativity, nights with laughter, and I hardly spared a thought for my ex-husband, buried as he was in the recesses of my memory. But life has a cruel sense of timing. Just when I thought I had left him and his demands behind, a notification arrived: my ex-husband had filed a lawsuit, demanding alimony. The news hit me like a sucker punch to the gut. How could he come crawling back now, after all these years? But there was no time to dwell on it. The courtroom awaited, and I was ready to face him head-on. The courtroom buzzed with tension as we awaited the judge's verdict. My heart pounded in my chest as I glanced over at my ex-husband, sitting in his wheelchair with a scowl etched across his face. Beside him sat his mother, her eyes filled with contempt as they bore into me. "So, you think you're gonna get away with this, huh?" my ex-husband sneered, his voice dripping with bitterness. I clenched my fists, trying to keep my temper in check. "I'm not trying to get away with anything. I'm just standing up for what's right," I shot back, my voice firm and unwavering. He scoffed, shaking his head in disbelief. "You're just a greedy silly who's trying to screw me over," he spat, his words like daggers aimed at my heart. I felt a surge of anger rising up inside me, threatening to consume me whole. "I'm not the one who abandoned our child," I retorted, my voice trembling with rage. His mother chimed in, her voice laced with venom. "You should be grateful that he even gave you the time of day. You're lucky he didn't leave you sooner," she sneered, her words like a slap in the face. I gritted my teeth, struggling to keep my composure. "You both abandoned our child when he needed you the most. You don't get to play the victim now," I declared, my voice ringing out with conviction. But they weren't about to back down. They continued to hurl insults and accusations, trying to twist the truth to suit their own agenda. But I stood my ground, refusing to be intimidated by their bullying tactics. And when the judge finally delivered his verdict, ruling in my favor and denying my ex-husband's claim for alimony, I felt a sense of vindication wash over me. I may have lost a battle once, but I had won the war. As we left the courtroom, Jake by my side, I couldn't help but feel a sense of pride in how far I had come. I had faced adversity head-on, and I had come out stronger and more resilient than ever before. And as we walked hand in hand into the bright future that lay ahead, I knew that no matter what challenges we faced, we would face them together, united in love, and unstoppable in our determination to build a better life for ourselves and our family.